If you grew up with stories of America's frontier, hearing your parents recount the legendary tales of pioneers, then the mystery of the Roanoke Colony is an unhealed wound in the minds of generations, a place where over 100 English settlers vanished without a trace, leaving only the word Croatoan and an unanswered question that has lingered for over 400 years. Do you still remember, or have you ever wondered, what truly happened on that island? Some believe the first settlers of Roanoke were captured or assimilated by native tribes. Oral traditions passed down through generations among the Croatan people still speak of pale-skinned figures with golden hair, unlike anyone in their villages, appearing quietly and vanishing into the thin mist. Despite vague records, no archaeological evidence, no physical trace has ever definitively confirmed these were the lost souls of Roanoke. Everything remains mere rumor, like a call in the dead of night from deep within desolate forests. Yet, some researchers argue the fate of this entire community was simply a tragedy of starvation, disease, and despair. Harsh months on an isolated island, lacking food and cut off from English aid, may have forced them to abandon their settlement, venturing into the wilderness or along rivers in search of new shelter. Perhaps they perished in the merciless wild or fell victim to conflicts with hostile tribes. Still, decades of excavations have yielded no bones, no signs of a destroyed camp, no tangible relics. The silence of the sand and forest pushes every theory into a dead end. Those who love the mystical don't hesitate to pull Roanoke into the realm of curses. They claim the island is haunted by some supernatural force, a loop of tormented souls, or a punishment from powers beyond everyday logic. Many 19th and 20th century novelists and historians called it the colony of ghosts, a haunted place lingering in the collective memory as an unnamed fear. Stories tell of voices, whispers, and footsteps wandering among lonely trees at night, as if the spirits of Roanoke still haven't found their way home. In the modern era, however, some scholars and conspiracy theorists view Roanoke through a colder political lens. They suggest it might have been a false flag, a staged event to deceive or distract international powers during the struggle for control of the New World. Some propose the English government, seeing the colony's failure, deliberately erased its traces to save face, or that Roanoke was a failed large-scale social experiment the Crown wished to keep secret. If true, the truth may lie buried with coded decrees and mysterious records yet to be deciphered. Looking back, every theory, whether rational or fantastical, grounded in archaeology, native legend, or political speculation, shares one thing: no one truly knows what happened on Roanoke Island in the summer of 1590. Each generation keeps asking, and each answer unveils a new layer of mystery, making this disappearance an unhealed scar in American history. Some places are veiled by history just enough to hide the truth, but never enough to stop human curiosity. Roanoke Island is such a place. Its nights are not just darkness, but a space filled with echoes from the past. For over a century, locals around North Carolina's Outer Banks have whispered that when night falls on Roanoke, every breeze carries strange calls, unintelligible murmurs rising from ancient pines. In August 1891, the Wilmington Messenger published a story about a group of local hunters who, while camping overnight on the island, heard children crying and footsteps running on the sand, though no one was around. One hunter swore, "I clearly heard someone whisper a name in my ear, like a voice rising from the earth." In 1922, historian Frederick Chapman described his experience on the island. "Something heavy and cold enveloped me from behind. Every time I turned, the trees seemed to move, as if someone had just passed by." This sensation is not unique to those who've set foot on Roanoke, especially on foggy moonlit nights when mist drapes the island like a shroud over every trace. Local folklore and famous writers alike tie Roanoke to the colony of ghosts. In 1901, poet Sally Southall Cotton wrote in her collection, The White Doe, "Roanoke is where every breeze whispers the tale of souls who haven't found their way home." Author Nancy Roberts, known for her works on Southern supernatural phenomena, noted in North Carolina Ghosts and Legends, "Countless times, people claim to have seen faint green lights drifting through the forest, figures in 16th century clothing walking in the mist, then vanishing as if they never existed." Ancient curse stories also abound in native legends. According to tales from Manteo, a Croatan leader who aided the Roanoke settlers, The island was once sacred, forbidden to outsiders. Some believe their intrusion angered ancestral spirits, leading to unthinkable consequences. In a 1590 report to England, Governor John White himself wrote, "When I returned, I heard the wind howl through the trees like the cries of lost loved ones, and the word Ciroaton carved on the tree was like a message from another realm." Outer Banks locals don't just share tales of whispering voices or mysterious lights on the island, they also speak of strange occurrences for those daring to test Roanoke's limits. Some claim that on stormy nights, tents pitched near the forest's edge collapse without being touched. Sometimes, tiny childlike footprints appear in the wet sand at dawn, leading deep into the woods before vanishing, leaving an inexplicable chill. In 1962, a group of archaeology students from the University of North Carolina came to the island to search for historical traces. In the research journal of the team leader, Dr. Margaret Evans, she wrote, "We camped near the southern forest edge. That night, past midnight, I woke to steady tapping on a tree near our tent. When I checked outside, the wind suddenly stopped, the air thick and colder than normal. It felt like something was standing close, but I saw no one. The next morning, we found strange charcoal symbols drawn around the camp, and no one in our group knew where they came from." Dr. Evans later admitted, "I've done archaeology in ancient sites worldwide, but nowhere have I felt like an unwelcome intruder as I did at Roanoke." In recent years, more paranormal researchers have flocked to Roanoke. Some conduct seances or use EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, recorders to capture voices from the other side. Results often yield eerie sounds, children laughing, someone calling Eleanor, or whispers of phrases like "we're here," matching the name of Governor John White's daughter, believed to haunt the island most deeply. Even American documentary film crews have encountered inexplicable phenomena while filming on Roanoke. In a 1998 episode of America's Haunted History, director James Paxton recounted, "We were recording when the microphone picked up strange background. Noises, distant calls, footsteps circling our camp, though our crew of 4 was all together. The footage later needed editing because the audio was too unsettling for test audiences. Perhaps on Roanoke, every mystery is tied to the darkness and the lost souls still cannot rest. If you dare stay on the island long enough, you might be the next to hear your name echo through the night of history." But if it were only about ghosts and supernatural tales, Roanoke's mystery wouldn't haunt generations so deeply. Delving into ancient archives and modern research reveals stranger details, prompting some historians and analysts to ask questions more shocking than any curse. Some scholars suggest the entire Roanoke disappearance was the result of a meticulously covered-up political plot. Late 16th century England was not only vying for New World control against Spain, but also grappling with internal conflicts, religious strife, and courtly divisions. Some propose that, realizing the Roanoke colony's failure, the English government deliberately erased the event from national records to preserve its reputation and avoid weakening its stance against international rivals. Researcher Lee Miller in Roanoke, Solving the Mystery of the Lost Colony, analyzed, "The disappearance of an entire community without a trace is practically impossible. This suggests interference or orchestration at a very high level, beyond the control of the governor or a small group of settlers. Some even theorize Roanoke was part of a failed social experiment, a miniature England in the New World, that, when it went awry, the Crown chose to erase all evidence, from logs to letters, even forbidding survivors from speaking of it. To this day, many Roanoke-related records in England remain missing or classified. Later documents also hint at a possible secret relocation, the government or covert agents moving the entire colony elsewhere, only for war, disease, or other reasons to erase them forever. What about the theory of assimilation with native peoples? This is the most grounded and widely supported hypothesis, though no definitive proof exists. According to Croatan oral traditions, after the colony collapsed, some English settlers sought refuge with their community, marrying, blending in, and fading from official history. Early 18th century English explorer John Lawson noted, "I met Croatan people with fair skin, gray eyes, and blonde hair traits uncommon among local tribes, except for the mysterious presence of white people integrated into their community generations earlier. Yet hundreds of archaeological digs and genetic tests have found no concrete physical or genetic evidence to confirm this. At Roanoke, every theory, whether supernatural, political, or cultural, hits an invisible wall, the darkness of time and the silence of the past. Perhaps it's this failure to find the truth that keeps the Roanoke mystery alive, fueling imagination and obsession in the American psyche. But if assimilation is only a small piece of the puzzle, the word Croatoan carved into a tree at the Roanoke Colony opens another path. That word, not a sign of panic, but a message, a clue for those who returned, has sparked debate for centuries. One theory suggests the entire colony deliberately left their settlement for Croatoan Island, now Hatteras, where they had received aid from the friendlier Croatan tribe. When Governor John White returned and saw the word, he immediately believed his people had moved there. In his journal he wrote, "No signs of coercion or violence. The houses were dismantled neatly, no belongings left in haste, no blood, no bodies. It seemed they left by plan, leaving only the clue of Croatoan. But when the search party reached Croatoan Island, hope faded. No one awaited them. The villages were empty, silent. Recent archaeological digs uncovered a few European artifacts, pottery shards, a knife blade, a copper pipe, but nothing confirms the 117 missing settlers lived there. If none of these theories fully hold, researchers turn to a grimmer possibility, a tragedy of starvation, disease, and harsh nature. Historical records show Roanoke was a wild, unforgiving land with brutal weather, scarce freshwater, and poor soil. Food was scarce, and aid from England was delayed by war with Spain. Historian David Stick noted, even if the settlers tried to hold on, they couldn't withstand nature and endless isolation. The colony may have reached despair, splitting into small groups to seek survival. They could have died in the deep woods, along rivers, or as victims of unrecorded diseases. Strangely, no skeletons, no mass graves, no trace of their fate have been found. The silence of the land and forest still overshadows every search, as if Roanoke's souls never truly belonged to this world. To understand the full tragedy of the Roanoke Colony, we must rewind to the late 16th century, a turbulent era for England. It was a time when dreams of territorial expansion and conquering the seas burned fiercely in the small island nation. Queen Elizabeth I had solidified her throne after upheaval and now sought to leave England's mark on the promising distant lands across the Atlantic. In this atmosphere, ships sailed one after another, carrying hope, curiosity, and the daring of an emerging empire. The Roanoke Colony was born amid this wave, the first brick in England's path to America. In 1587, a group of 117 settlers, men, women, children, left their homeland for a promised land on what is now the Carolina coast. They weren't just pioneers, but gamblers of fate, carrying a nation's dreams and fears across the ocean to an utterly unknown world. Leading them was John White, an experienced artist and explorer, not only their governor, but also the father of Eleanor Dare, a young woman carrying Europe's next generation in the New World. Eleanor gave birth to Virginia Dare at Roanoke, the first white child born on American soil, a symbol of hope for the immigrant community. Yet, those hope-filled early days soon gave way to harsh reality. Barren soil, limited freshwater, brutal winters, and escalating tensions with local tribes created an oppressive atmosphere. Food dwindled, safety fears mounted, forcing John White to return to England just months after arriving, seeking aid, food, and weapons. None of the 117 settlers could have imagined his trip would last 3 years. War with Spain erupted, diverting England's resources to European battlefields, halting or banning supply ships to Roanoke. When John White returned in the summer of 1590, he found only absolute silence and the word Croatoan carved into a tree, a pain that would never fade. In that moment, not just a community vanished, but a grand dream collapsed, the dream of pioneering, conquering, and reaching a promised land for an empire just setting sail. 3 years away were 3 years of mounting anxiety for John White. When his ship reached the Carolina coast in the summer of 1590, he and his crew stepped onto Roanoke with both hope and dread. They ventured into the forest expecting to hear calls, children's laughter, the crackle of fires, or the smell of smoke from familiar thatched roofs. Instead, they met a deafening silence. Wooden huts had been neatly dismantled. No signs of struggle, no blood, no cries for help. Every trace of life had vanished in an instant. John White moved from hope to horror as he realized no one remained. On a large oak, a strange word was carved deeply with a knife, Croatoan. On another tree near the camp's gate, 3 letters, CRO, were hastily etched. In his journal, he wrote, "I searched for laughter, cries, footsteps, but all that remained was the wind and Croatan." Personal belongings and daily items were carefully cleared. No signs of a panicked flight. No graves, no skeletons, not even an unfinished meal. The only thing haunting John White and his crew was the absolute silence, a chilling void, as if the entire community had evaporated from the earth. Following the only clue, the word Croatoan, the search party set out for Croatoan Island, now Hatteras, about 50 miles south, where relations with the Croatan tribe had been friendly. But upon arrival, they found only deserted villages, not a soul waiting. Inquiries with local natives yielded no clear answers. It was all like a mirage. Modern archaeologists have excavated Roanoke, Croatoan, and nearby mainland, finding only broken pottery, a few European artifacts, nothing conclusively tied to the 117 lost settlers. All that remains are faint traces like shadows of the past. John White's return to Roanoke was not just a search, but a symbol of loss and an unanswered question. In his final years, he was haunted by the fate of his daughter and granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first white child born in the New World, forever unknown. Where she went, who she became, or how she was buried in the deep woods. His final journal entry, brief but haunting for centuries, read, "We searched every corner, called every loved one's name." But Roanoke sank into silence. Only the winds remain, and the past never answers back. More than a disappearance, Roanoke is a symbol of human fragility before nature, fate, and the limits of knowledge. The image of John White, alone on an empty shore, walking among cold ashes, calling out names in vain, is not just a father's pain, but a tragedy for a generation of pioneers. It's the helplessness of facing an unchangeable reality, where dreams, efforts, and hopes were swept away in a moment of absolute silence. The obsession with Roanoke has etched itself into the American consciousness. For over 400 years, the lost colony has been retold at family dinners, in history books, and local legends. For America's pioneers, Roanoke is not just a lesson in the risks of exploration, but a reminder that some mysteries may never be solved, and that's what gives history its depth. The story of Roanoke's lost souls, the haunting Croatoan carving, the faint traces, has become inseparable from American culture and imagination. From literature to films to Halloween festivals, the lost colony reminds each generation of the value of memory, the departed, and what still awaits discovery. Yet the Roanoke mystery persists, an unhealed wound in history. Was it a small community swallowed by harsh nature, the result of hidden conspiracies, or truly a place shadowed by an unseen force for over 400 years? What do you think happened to the 117 people who vanished at Roanoke? Which theory do you find most compelling, or do you have clues, insights, or new stories history hasn't mentioned? Share your thoughts, experiences, or even your own theories in the comments below, because who knows, you might add a piece to America's greatest mystery. And if you want to join us on more journeys into history's mysteries, don't forget to follow me, where every unanswered question opens a new world waiting to be explored.